What's Oregon State like? Yeah, like that.
Hi Beaver Nation, and thank you for joining us for our YouTube livestream town hall, where you can hear directly from university leadership about topics pertaining to the PAC conference realignment. We're glad you're here and hope that this conversation can provide you with more clarity on this topic. I'm the Associated Students of Oregon State University President Carissa O'Donnell, and I am joined by OSU President Jayathi Murthy and Vice President and Athletic Director Scott Barnes. Those of you who attended our town hall with Athletic Director Barnes and Provost Ed Frazier on August 22nd heard about some of the events leading up to the destabilization of the Pac-12 1 month ago. If you missed that town hall, you can view a recording on our conference development webpage and at the address on your screen. We'll provide a recording of this town hall on the same webpage, and we'll show this address again at the end of the event. Today, we're going to answer some questions that you submitted about what happened, what the potential impacts might be, and what to expect in the weeks and months ahead. I would like to preface that due to impending negotiations, there are some topics we cannot speak directly to. We hope to focus on questions we can elaborate on, and we hope you can still find clarity through this town hall. So thank you all for submitting questions and staying so engaged in the events happening surrounding Beaver Athletics. It acts as a consistent reminder for the community we represent and have supporting us. Thank you for joining us, President Murthy and Vice President Barnes.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thank you, Carissa, for doing this. Thank you to ASOSU for their leadership. Thanks also to our student athletes and their leadership for pulling all this together. So happy to have your interest and your passion behind OSU athletics.
Yes, and I too want to thank our student athletes and coaches. They have been absolutely inspiring. And the most recent example that would be our football game Saturday. We are continue to battle for the highest and best place possible for our student athletes, and thinking first and foremost of their well-being. So we look forward to continuing to move forward.
Absolutely. Well, again, we appreciate you being here. The first question that I might have, I would direct towards President Murthy, but do you foresee a viable future for the Pac-12 now that Stanford and California have joined another conference?
Good question. There's no question that it's become a lot harder, right? I mean, there are two of us left, WSU, OSU, and the departure of those two schools has made it much more difficult. But we recognize that the Pac-12 brand is a big brand, and there's a lot of good that comes with it. And so we are absolutely determined to preserve as much of that opportunity as we possibly can. So we're working really hard to do it. We think it's absolutely important for our students to have all the opportunities that that brand brings with us.
Thank you. And then maybe a quick follow-up to that. Have we received confirmation that Washington State University is committed to the PAC?
Yeah, we're working very, very closely with WSU. I mean, we talk to them, I think, multiple times a week.
Yeah.
I mean, almost every day, some weeks. They see the world very much as we do, so we're very aligned in our interest in the PAC.
Awesome. And then a question for Vice President Barnes. If Oregon State does plan to stay in the Pac-12, how do we plan to attract and keep other member schools to make the conference feasible? And then maybe another kind of follow-up question to that is, what does the conference realignment mean for OSU's Power 5 status? And are we at risk of kind of losing that standing?
Yeah, no, great question, Carissa. And I think President Murthy hit a little bit on some of that, which is, we have a number of assets and status, I'll call it, that is attractive to members that are out there, and particularly those in our region. So what could attract new membership is both the assets that we're continuing to work hard to identify and understand, and the status both as a A5 member of the NCAA and as a Power 5 member with CFP access. And CFP being the college football playoff. So those things bring a level of leverage in that regard.
Awesome. And then have we received confirmation from other universities that they're interested in recreating the Pac-12?
We have. We have a number of schools out there that have shown their interest in wanting to align with us.
Awesome. Perfect. And then maybe a question for President Murthy. Has Oregon State been considering other options besides rebuilding the Pac, like joining the Mountain West or partnering with the Pac-12 with another conference?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is such an important decision for OSU athletics that we're considering every option there is. So certainly rebuilding or preserving the Pac in some way is one of the options. We've had good conversations with the Mountain West, with other conferences as well, and we're looking at a variety of options for partnering, merging, and so on. Those options are going to emerge in the next few weeks as we figure out what the financials are and what and what it means to make one kind of arrangement or another. The thing that I want to assure you of is that we're deeply aware of the importance, not just of the short term, but of the long term. So we're keeping all that in mind.
Perfect. And then maybe kind of going off of that, Vice President Barnes, what are the priorities for student athlete resources moving forward under the realignment? So are departments and resources at risk of being reduced or eliminated at this time?
Yeah, there's no question that we'll see a difference in the revenue streams coming in a realignment, but our priority remains the same, and it starts with our Build the Dam strategic plan. Priority number one is a holistic development of our student athletes, and so continuing the investment at a very high level for our student athletes is super important. That, along with making sure we're competing at the very highest level. And we've heard from our student athletes about that. We've had engaging conversations with them, and that's come out in those conversations.
Fantastic. Well, that's very reassuring to hear. Maybe another question in regards to that is, what does the realignment mean for non-revenue generating sports? So are there discussions of sports being cut or their funding being cut?
As we look at this process, and it's been a super complex process, one of the priorities in the process is to understand how our university's sports sponsorship matches up with those that we're talking to, whether that's conference or individual schools. That in and of itself provides the path forward for those Olympic sports. As an example, in the Pac-12, we currently have what we call affiliate sports, where maybe not the entire membership of the Pac-12 is involved, but there are enough, and then others are added. So, as we look at a path forward, our Olympic sports, our women's sports, 17 total sports, are all being planned on competing in a new way at the highest level. Moving forward, and we're working on that every single day.
And then, Vice President Barnes, do we have any concerns about our recent Reser Stadium remodel being impacted by this realignment?
What's really been a blessing about Reser Stadium is when you look back at some of the core fundamental goals of that project. One was the funding model, and that funding model reassured both stability and growth in our athletic program, and that comes by way of two areas. One is the huge number of gifts that we receive thanks to Beaver Nation, our loyal supporters, over $100 million in philanthropy, coupled with a myriad of new revenue streams, and so both combined not only pay our annual debt service, but go way beyond that to support all 17 of our programs. So we actually look at Reser Stadium as sort of the guiding light in the storm to help stabilize and ultimately grow our revenues.
So thank you so much. And then President Murthy, kind of looking at the bigger picture here, on the surface, this issue seems to only affect a small portion of OSU or of the OSU student body. Can you speak to how the ripple effects of these issues impact the broader student population and why it's receiving so much attention?
Good question, Carissa. The truth is our focus is always on the student, all right? And athletics is a part of the holistic student development that you were talking about, Scott. I mean, that's really what it's all about. I'm keenly aware that things like student athletic scholarships really open up opportunity for a whole range of students who couldn't be here at OSU if that weren't open to them, all right? So it's a part of the broader access mission of the university. So we've got to pay attention to that. There's other things that belonging to a strong athletic conference does for us. It shines light on OSU. It gives us a national audience. And so it allows us to make an impact at the national level. And I know that that's of importance to students. And, athletics generally, I'm usually, I'm a strong athletics fan, but I'm also particularly aware of the kind of opportunities that it gives women students, for example. Athletics for women have been a huge part of their professional development going forward. I think that's really important. Strangely enough, I actually see this as a part of our land grant mission because athletics allows us to connect to our communities. They're so passionate about OSU athletics. It allows us to make strong connections to them, to stay connected in all kinds of ways, not just through athletics, but really through all the other channels that we connect with them with. So that's the reason that that this is such an important problem for us to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like how this kind of highlights that, and this conversation is kind of focusing on that. So thank you. Maybe another question I might have for Vice President Barnes is, are there any concerns about how our athletics programs will run in the future? So, for example, are we expecting to see a large volume of student athletes transferring to other universities because of the conference realignment?
Yeah, Carissa, that's another really good question and a thoughtful one in that when you think about why our student athletes come here and why in large measure they stay, first and foremost, it's about this place, and it's about the people that walk the hallways, the leadership, the facilities, the culture that's been built here. Conference realignment and conference where we play is super important, but it's not the most important thing that our student athletes consider. So as we think about what next year and the future looks like, as we've talked, and I've talked to all of our coaches, we're leaning into that culture. We're leaning into this special place, and what hasn't changed is what Oregon State is. And that the attributes that we pull from that are the strongest thing we have to attract and retain our student athletes. Now, again, I want to say one more time that conference alignment is really important, really important. But I'll give you an anecdotal here. Recently, we had two very high-level recruits on our campus in volleyball who, the day that the news broke about conference realignment, they were on campus, and a week later they both verbally committed. Why? It goes back to what I said before. The culture, the people, the leadership, the facilities, the comfort and feeling they have when they're at Oregon State. So we'll lean into that as we move forward, and with that, I think that we'll see much less transferring and movement than maybe folks think.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Let's see, President Murthy, when can we expect an answer about what is happening next? And can you offer a rough estimate for when Oregon State will commit to a conference?
Well, I can understand the impatience. I'm impatient myself. I'd love to see this whole thing end and for us to come out in a really good place. So we're working very hard to make that happen. There's a lot of moving pieces here and a lot of complexities around it, and that's part of why it's taking us time to make this decision. There are some things that will move fast, and there'll be some things that move much slower. That's just in the nature of things. But we do know that some decisions have to be made in a few weeks. I mean, we've got scheduling issues and so on that need to be settled fairly soon. So you'll be hearing in several weeks rather than several months or even several years. So we're going to move them as fast as we can. But I will tell you that for me, making the right decision is the most important thing. I mean, this is a big decision for us. It affects a lot of people. And so getting it right is absolutely the most important thing.
I appreciate it. And then Vice President Barnes, one more question. So how quickly does the university need to make a decision, and would the decision we make for the 2024 to 2025 athletic season be long-term or temporary? Yeah,
so again, and President Jayathy really hit on the next several weeks for sure. We want that decision made for a lot of logistical reasons, including scheduling and just all the nuts and bolts of how we assemble ourselves in a new conference. As it relates to future decisions, what we do want is flexibility. So as we think about the complexity of the path forward, we want to keep flexibility in mind for making sure that we are seizing the best opportunities. So certainly our path forward will give us stability over the next couple plus years, but long term, when we think about down the line, that flexibility comes in play.
Awesome. And then President Murthy, what can students and the OSU community do to help right now?
First of all, I got to say you guys have been wonderful. Look at these sellout crowds. I know it's going to be a great season going forward. I need you all to do the thing that you're doing so well, which is to support OSU, to tell the story of OSU and how wonderful we are. Not just athletically, but academically, and in fact in every way. And think about everything that this university is, all right? This year we've got record enrollments. Over 35,000 students have enrolled. We've got amazing things happening on the research front. We just posted $480 million in research funding. There's so much good going on. So tell the story of our excellence athletically, tell the story of our excellence academically, and we'll be calling on you to lend your voices to make the case for OSU.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then Vice President Barnes, what are you most looking forward to this upcoming season?
You know, we're here for our student athletes and their ability to compete and to be successful in the classroom and in life. And so what we saw last Saturday, them on the field competing and having fun, and our fans there supporting them, is what I'm looking forward to, is getting on with our business of putting our student athletes in a position to succeed. And can't wait for our first home football game, a shameless plug, UC Davis, 6 o'clock on Saturday. Let's sell it out. Let's sell it out for our student athletes, and go Beavers. Go Beavs.
Go Beavs. Awesome. Well, thank you again, President Murthy and Vice President Barnes. And thank you to all of those who joined this town hall live stream. That URL again, where you can submit questions and view recordings of this and the previous town halls, should be on the screen. Know that the associated students of Oregon State University are actively participating in these conversations to best represent and advocate for OSU students. We look forward to more conversations like this one to explore topics that matter to you. Again, good afternoon and go Beavs. Thank you.